Have you ever lost someone who meant so much to you that even years after they die, just the thought of them brings overwhelming sorrow? Something will trigger a memory, and you long to be with them again, just for one more day or even an hour. But what if you were told that it was possible to contact your dead loved one, to talk to them, to know that they were all right? Would you do it? Welcome to Patterns of Supernatural Phenomena. Those who have just lost a loved one for any reason are at the most vulnerable moment of their lives. And then there are the terrible losses during war. Families who lose a young soldier experience crushing heartbreak. That was the case with a very successful and wealthy writer during World War II. Her name was Adela Rogers St. John's. Adela had been born into a prestigious Southern California family and had found early success as a screenwriter, journalist, and novelist. By World War II, she was well known and accepted in the highest circles of society. Adela had a son named Bill, whom she deeply loved. When he enlisted in the Royal Canadian Air Force to get into the war even before America was involved, she was overwhelmed with fear. Bill became a combat pilot and began flying dangerous missions with the British Air Corps all over Europe. One day the awful telegram arrived. Her son had been killed in action. Bill had died a hero, saving the men on his plane. Because of the way he had died, there was not even a body to send home to his family. Adela was absolutely crushed. She'd already lost so many. Her father, who had been a brilliant trial attorney, had drunk himself to death, and there were others. In her sorrow, Adela had a desperate idea. She would call a friend named Eileen Garrett, who was the most famous psychic medium of her day. Many believed that she could contact the dead. Garrett invited Adela for a visit. When she arrived, Adela was led toward the living room where tea had been prepared. But on the way, suddenly Garrett stopped, looked up, and said, "Well, here's Bill." Adela almost stopped breathing. She couldn't remember ever mentioning that she had a son named Bill, and certainly she hadn't told her that he had been killed in action. Garrett said that Bill was looking at Adela and smiling. Adela wanted to know what he was wearing. Garrett said it was a British uniform, but that puzzled her. Wasn't Bill an American? Adela explained that the uniform was Canadian. Bill had a message for his mother. Through Eileen Garrett, he said, and I quote, "Mama, I love you. Don't worry about me. I'm all right. I'm happy here. I'm with friends. But you must stop grieving for me. That will only hold me back. You must get on with your life, Mama, so I can get on with mine. Pray for me, Mama. Pray for all of us here. It helps us advance." The message ended, and Garrett said that Bill was gone. Adela was amazed and overwhelmed with joy. She was sure that Bill had been there. He had been the only one of her children who had ever called her Mama. Garrett was leaving town, but she gave Adela an odd suggestion. She should ask her adult daughter Elaine to contact Bill through automatic writing. Well, Elaine was not happy about this. She'd never had any interest in such things, but to please her mother, she gave it a try. The results were stunning. Bill began communicating through her. She would sit down to write, and the words and style of writing were clearly not her own. something else was taking control. And so it began. Reluctantly at first, Elaine became a spirit medium. At the beginning, it was only messages from her brother to their mother. But then other people started coming, hoping to hear from their dead loved ones. And messages arrived, all through the entity that called itself Bill. Over the years in her writings, Adela St. John's shared many of the messages received by friends from beings on the other side. As a cultural Christian with some literary knowledge of the Bible, like so many of her generation, she tried to put psychic abilities into a biblical context. She decided that to be a psychic was a talent just like the talents Jesus talked about in his parable found in Matthew 25. In her view, we're all born knowing things that we have forgotten, and through discovery of our psychic abilities, God helps us remember. One woman, a friend of Adela's who considered herself a Christian, met a spirit guide who claimed to have been her husband in a previous life. This being guided her deeper into automatic writing so she could discover all that he wanted to teach her. She progressed rapidly in her psychic abilities and began holding automatic writing seances for others. During a sitting for a man named Larry, a guide came to her and the pen began to write. I quote from the message she received. In the accepted path of dogmatic belief, God is dead. Therefore, God is dead in the old tradition and lives only in the one soul's being, which must from the very start connect with all mankind. End of quote. Adela and her friends came to believe that the guide who gave that message was none other than the spirit of assassinated President John F. Kennedy. According to this being, God exists only in collective humanity. If that's true, we've all got trouble. With her prestige as a writer, Adela Rogers St. John's became a strong advocate for contact with the dead. In her words, there was nothing to worry about regarding death. There didn't need to be any real goodbyes. Adela Rogers St. John's passed away in 1988 at 94 years old. So according to the spirit guides unearthed by St. John's and her friends, what happens to people when they die? Well, they go to a nice place where they enter deep contemplation in order to grow to the next level of existence. And of course they could reincarnate. But is this true? Or could all of it be part of a vast lie perpetrated by supernatural beings intent on destroying broken-hearted people by giving them the most beautiful, loving, compassionate messages at the time of their greatest vulnerability? I'm a mentalist and a past member of the Academy of Magical Arts at the Magic Castle of Hollywood. In my early 20s, I began studying fraudulent psychic phenomena and its effects on people. I talked about that in the very first episode of this series and in others since. After many years of study, I'm convinced that there are three types of so-called spirit mediums. First, there are those cynical individuals who use brazen trickery such as mentalism to manipulate their victims for profit. Available to them on the internet is an amazing amount of personal information about almost anyone who comes to them. This they can weave into impressive lies. Second, there are those who really believe they have psychic ability, but depend mostly on psychological subtleties that they are convinced are part of their gift. Often they will use a technique called cold reading to learn hidden facts about those who come to them. These facts are used in their psychic presentations, which they believe really help people. Cold reading is a powerful system that can be used to take control of people's minds. Cold readings follow a general pattern. They start with a setup which establishes what the reading is going to be about. This is followed by statements and questions presented in the most loving, caring manner that are carefully structured to both reveal and manipulate. Professional psychics are experts at subtly turning their misses into hits that hide their errors. TV mediums, such as the current favorite Tyler Henry, who gets his spirit guidance by scribbling on a piece of paper, have another advantage: editing. They can edit out the mistakes in their readings before vast audiences see them. But their greatest power is this: the people who come to them desperately want to believe that their claimed abilities are real. I can tell you as a mentalist with years of experience in dealing with audiences that this desire can give frightening emotional control over almost anyone. Years ago, there was a professional mentalist named David Hoy. The man was tremendously talented and wrote books explaining some of the mental tricks that he created. I have them in my library. My wife and I saw Hoy perform at a meeting conducted by a Midwest psychic named Irene Hughes. Hughes did her readings for audience members, and Hoy did his psychic tricks, which he performed as though they were real. The audience was enthralled. Knowing the fraud as I did, this was disturbing to watch. To all the people in that room, Hoy presented himself as a true psychic. For me, his life was tragic. David Hoy was the son of a Baptist preacher. He himself started out as a Southern Baptist evangelist, but he had fallen to the temptation of power and money and ended his life as a professional psychic, supposedly teaching others how to develop their gifts. Of course, all for profit. Hoy represents what I call crossover psychics. People who begin by using conscious tricks and psychological techniques, but end up believing the delusion that they have real abilities because they seem to help people so much. They lie to themselves even more than to their clients. Finally, there is a third category of mediums: those who actually are in contact with spirit entities who become their guides. But do spirit guides really exist? And if so, who are they? To answer those questions, I want to introduce you to one of the most unusual books that I've ever read. The author is a Canadian journalist named Joe Fisher. Mr. Fisher spent 5 years doing the most excruciating investigating into spirit mediumship that I've ever read. But the word investigation is misleading. The fact is that he became deeply involved with spirit guides as a true believer. However, through it all, he remained a methodical and painstaking observer. His conclusions have much to tell us. It all began in 1984 when Fisher met a man named Roger Bellencourt, who had spent many years participating in occult activities. At one point, Bellencourt had tried automatic writing. He found himself scrawling the words, "My name is Jaylin. I am your spirit guide. I was a Tibetan Lama, and I am with you constantly." Well, Bellencourt thought it was just a product of his imagination. But a few weeks later, he attended an aura balancing session. When he arrived, the leader said to him, "Do you know that you have a large Oriental man dressed in monk's clothing who is with you?" This led Bellencourt deep into contact with Jaylin and other spirit guides. Fisher began attending regular Friday night seances with Bellencourt. He states that over time, he became more and more convinced that the entities who manifested were exactly who they claimed to be. Most significantly, he met a guide named Philippa, who said that she was the woman he had loved and lost more than 200 years ago. Well, this was fascinating, but he had trouble contacting her. For weeks, she didn't appear through the medium in the sessions. Finally, she sent the instruction that when he wanted to reach her, he must clear his thoughts of anything but her. So that's what he began doing through meditation. And the ever-growing obsession had deep consequences in his life. Fisher was living with a woman named Rachel. As he talked more and more about spirit guides, and particularly Philippa, Rachel felt him drawing away from her. How can you compete with a 200-year-old invisible lover? Fisher managed to get Rachel to begin attending the evening seances with him. There, a spirit guide appeared through the medium who claimed to be Scottish and spoke with a thick brogue. He kept calling Rachel lass and told her that centuries ago she had been his son. Rachel did not appreciate any of this. In fact, she was totally repulsed, which Fisher just couldn't understand. He convinced himself it was because Rachel was jealous of Philippa. And how wonderful his spirit lover was. Wistfully, she recalled their life together on the little Greek island of Theros and its villages. She told him his name had been Andreas Cherniak. He had been a brave militiaman who had led a group of guerrillas against the Turks, while she slaved faithfully in the fields on the island. Frequently she would ask him, "Don't you remember?" She gave him a lot of very specific information about their life together on Theros. Also, she told him about his other previous lives. Philippa said that he had reincarnated many times, while she had preferred to remain in the in-between state. And Fisher believed everything she told him. However, like a good journalist, he wrote down all of the details. Everything Philippa said to him were with the words of a lover. Fisher recounts that each day he would surrender utterly to her in deep meditation. During those sessions, he began receiving mental images which he told him were of their life together. When Philippa was present, he felt a deep sense of contentment and peace. Nevertheless, when the sessions ended, doubt would return. Was all of this real? The cast of supernatural characters that appeared during group seances was truly staggering. Fisher states that the spirit medium Aviva, who would lead these sessions, would cruise from tribal African base to prim upper-class English to rippling Anglo-Indian to Carolina drawl to broad Scottish and back again. Watching her, Fisher did not believe it was possible for this simple woman to fake such performances. Professional actors trained in dialects wouldn't be able to do it the way she did. The ultimate message of the supernatural guides was straight out of Eastern mysticism. By means of successive incarnations and progression through non-physical planes, humans are making their way back to that pure state of being where individuality, personhood, would be freely and willingly surrendered forever. They had much to say about religion. Fisher was informed that Jesus Christ was no more evolved than any member of their seance group, and what he accomplished was no more important than what any one of them would accomplish in multiple lifetimes. Supporting everything that he was taught was the constantly deepening relationship with Philippa. Fisher says that if she had a physical body, he would have married her instantly, but she was only a voice and an imagined presence. As his relationship with her grew, the one with Rachel disintegrated. But he wasn't really sorry when she left. It allowed him even more time with Philippa. The process of obsession that Fisher describes is agonizing to read. Finally, there came a time when he wanted to physically experience Theros, where Philippa had told him they had lived and loved together for so long. He believed that actually being there would deepen their relationship even further. She had given him many geographical and historical details about their Greek island and the life they had shared. Also, he had taken careful notes about the historical information that other guides had given to members of the group. So began a physical journey that took Fisher to Greece the British Isles, and elsewhere. He went to all of the places that Philippa and the other guides had described, searching for the reality that would establish proof of past life existence. In Greece came the greatest shock. Fisher was horrified to learn that the romantic island Theros did not exist and had never existed. It was a total fantasy concocted by the being that called itself Philippa. With that, the whole lying facade came crashing down. His search continued. Not one single thing his lover Philippa and the other entities had described to support who they were proved to be true. All the detailed geographical and historical proofs that they had given were carefully fabricated lies. They thought they could get away with it. After all, who would travel from Canada to Europe to check them out? For Joe Fisher, this led to an emotional and spiritual crisis. He was certain that the supernatural beings speaking through the medium were real, but he also knew that in no sense were they telling the truth about who they really were. And if they were lying about the massive amount of geographical and historical details that they had given to prove that people in the group had lived past lives, certainly they were lying about everything else as well. He and the others had wasted years and destroyed relationships by listening and obeying everything these sweet, loving demons had instructed. Fisher titled his book, The Siren Call of Hungry Ghosts, a riveting investigation into channeling and spirit guides. Here is his conclusion, and I quote, "Little by little, I reclaimed my personal identity, realizing all the while how much I had lived a shadow life. With developing clarity, I saw how subtly and how stealthily I had become dependent on Philippa, how in questioning my every move and motive, I had deferred again and again to what I believed she expected of me." End of quote. Fisher states that slowly, he began to extricate himself from what he calls the guide's gentle tyranny. But much healing had to be done. Fisher met others who had been through horrendous experiences with spirit guides and had broken free. One was a man named Sanford Ellison. Few people had devoted themselves to obeying the guides the way Ellison had. I quote Fisher again. Listening to Sanford's tale of trauma, I could see how the guides had traded on his weaknesses and good intentions and had coaxed him into a pit of wretchedness and despondency. He was like a moth that, drawn perilously close to a flame, had somehow managed to veer away from a deadly fascination. End of quote. Regarding the human mediums who were used by the entities, Fisher states that he doesn't believe any of them were involved in conscious fraud. The entities gave very specific and accurate information about people that a human medium could not have known. Also, they were incapable of creating the amazing performances. But there was a cost to be paid to break free. For specific reasons, Fisher believes that forsaking the control of these evil beings and choosing to write negatively about them brought a terrible physical attack, an abscess that refused to heal. From things that he learned, he was certain that the attack was from a supernatural realm. He met many others who went through similar experiences when they broke free. My friend, God has been absolutely clear in his warnings against trying to contact the spirit world. In Deuteronomy 18, verses 10 through 12, he gives this command: "There shall not be found among you anyone who burns his son or his daughter as an offering, anyone who practices divination or tells fortunes or interprets omens, or a sorcerer or a charmer or a medium or a wizard or a necromancer. For whoever does these things is an abomination to the Lord." Why did he give such a warning? because these evil occult practices have enslaved and destroyed humanity for untold thousands of years, just as they do today. We are surrounded by an unseen world of evil beings. They're like a virus from hell, and they have been watching and manipulating us for eons. They know you better than you know yourself, and they know your family going back in time. The Hollywood image of demons is part of their great lie. These entities can enter your life in the most loving, compassionate, and sensitive way, appealing to your deepest needs. They can present themselves as a caring soldier's son who died in battle, or a lover from a previous life. And they can give you apparently wonderful gifts, all of which will make you their slave. Remember, these are the same evil spirits who in the past commanded whole nations of human slaves to sacrifice their children. That is still their goal. The title of our series is Patterns of Supernatural Phenomena. And everywhere we look, the patterns of these evil beings are visible for those who want to see. Their goal is the destruction of the human race, one life at a time. They do it by taking control of a person who voluntarily gives their life to them. Underscore those words, voluntarily gives. Now there are generations of families that these demons think belong to them. Nevertheless, each person in that family has the choice to be enslaved or free. What is the central pattern of this vast evil? How do they destroy people today? Start with the sacrifice of children. Step 1. Create brutal vulnerability in children at the earliest possible age. Destroy families so that children grow up filled with sorrow, fear, and anger. During this destruction, begin to whisper lies about the love they need and where it may be found. Step 2. As they enter the age where they make important decisions, take advantage of the established vulnerability. Place before them bait that will draw them into a trap designed to target their longings. Step 3. Appear to fulfill on the promises that were dangled in the bait. Seem to give them what they deeply need, so that for a period of time, which could be years, they passionately believe that they have found the answer to their desires. Step 4. Enshroud them with lies about what happens after death. In particular, convince them that there is no hell. Everyone either goes right to heaven like sweet angels, except of course Hitler, or moves from one incarnation to the next, each time becoming a little better up the endless chain of life. We're going to deal with the lie of reincarnation in a future episode. Step 5. Destroy their hopes and dreams. In the process, poison their deep-seated hunger with despair, hopelessness, and rage, so that they can be used to destroy others, especially the next generation of children to be sacrificed, while ultimately destroying themselves. Evil spirits love suicide. What is the most important message of these evil spirits? With slavish consistency, whether speaking through a medium in Toronto to Joe Fisher or to Adela Rogers St. John's, or through false teachers and psychics of 100 varieties, including Tyler Henry, who was raised in a Christian home but no longer believes in a personal God, only a vague source, they have one vital message for you. More than anything else, they want you to believe that Jesus is not who the Bible says he is, the only begotten Son of God, sent to bear the sins of the world, paying the price for you and me. He is not the King of Kings and Lord of Lords, to whom all of us must answer, and who is coming back to rule someday. In desperation, they insist that none of this is true, and his salvation is unnecessary. All we have to do is love everybody while we work our way through many lives. But these invisible parasites know the truth. If they can suck the life of a person until they die, that man or woman will be lost forever. Enslavement in this life and eternal death for you is the only thing that brings them pleasure. Let me ask you a question. Imagine that there is a beautiful, charming psychopath on death row waiting to be executed for murdering 100 people. She did it by lying and tricking them, then slowly feeding them poison. Would you let that individual take control of your life, telling you how to live and what to believe? Would you accept all of her lies as truth? If one of her committed followers brought wonderful messages and gifts of food for you, would you suck it all down? That is exactly what people do who trust psychics, mediums, and channelers and the spirit guides that control them. Satan has many gifts planned just for you. One of them is the gift of self-sufficient arrogance. In our smug pride, we refuse to believe that we are slaves headed for destruction, all while we are living in chains. The greatest news in the universe is that Jesus came to set prisoners free. In fulfillment of an ancient prophecy, he said these words about himself in Luke 4, verses 18 to 19. The Spirit of the Lord is upon me, because he has anointed me to proclaim good news to the poor. He has sent me to proclaim liberty to the captives and recovering of sight to the blind, to set at liberty those who are oppressed, to proclaim the year of the Lord's favor. What is the only true hope for both this life and the next? I began with a story about a soldier who died. I'm going to conclude with another one. The great 19th century evangelist D.L. Moody told this story. During the Crimean War of the 1860s, the British were in a bloody confrontation with the Russian army. During the Battle of Inkerman, a young soldier was mortally wounded. He had just enough strength to crawl back to his tent. When they found him, he was lying face down with his Bible open before him. His hand was glued to a page with his own blood. When they lifted it, these were the blood-covered words that they saw. I am the resurrection and the life. He that believes in me, though he were dead, yet shall he live. That is the eternal promise of Jesus Christ for you and me. Is the Lord Jesus opening your eyes, my friend? Don't return into blindness. Humble yourself. Ask him to forgive your sins and give you a life that lasts forever. What he won't give you? 100 agonizing lives and deaths that you have to live through over and over with no knowledge about why you are suffering. The single life he gives is eternal. If we can be of help to you, contact us in the comments section. Also, if you believe in what we're doing here at Thorn Crown Studios, please consider joining our support team. We have a Patreon page and a Buy Me a Coffee page. And please do pray for us. We need it. Until next time, through the trials and battles of life, for those who trust in Jesus, there is joy coming in the morning. I want that.